I am 83 years old, and I can tell within 10 seconds when someone hears I live alone. Their eyes do this quick scan, like they're looking for the hidden tragedy. Then they soften their voice and say something like, "Oh, Laura, are you okay?" Or worse, "Do your kids know you're still there by yourself?" And look, I know what they mean. They think alone equals neglected, alone equals unsafe, alone equals we should fix this. What I'm going to confess to you is uncomfortable, and I need you to stay with me because it's going to matter later. The loneliest years of my life didn't come from living alone. The loneliest years of my life came from the habits I fell into when I was scared of being alone. Habits that pushed people away, made my children call less, and made me feel even more invisible. Honestly, nobody warns you about this part of aging. They warn you about wrinkles. They warn you about knees. They don't warn you about what you start doing to your own relationships when your world gets smaller. And if you recognize even one of these in yourself, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means you're human, and it means you can change it. I'm going to tell you 12 ugly things I've watched seniors do, and yes, I've done some of them myself, that quietly make aging harder than it has to be. And I'm saving the one that surprised me the most for later, because it's the one that almost cost me my home. The first one is becoming too negative and calling it just being honest. After Vincent died, I didn't realize how often I started my conversations with a complaint. My hip, the weather, the news, the price of groceries, the way people have no manners anymore. I told myself I was just telling the truth. But the truth is, negativity drains people. It drains them even when your complaints are reasonable. And what I didn't understand back then is that people don't avoid you because they don't love you. They avoid you because they don't have the strength to leave every conversation feeling worse than when they started. I noticed it when my granddaughter, Claire, stopped lingering on the phone. She used to tell me everything. Then she started saying, "Okay, Gran, I've got to run," within 5 minutes. My stomach dropped the first time I heard it. I thought, she's leaving me too. Here's the thing. She wasn't leaving me. She was escaping the heaviness I was handing her. So I made myself a rule. I allowed myself 2 minutes of complaining. 2. Then I had to pivot. I had to ask her something real, or tell her one good thing I'd noticed that day, even if it was small. The lilacs came in. I slept better. I finally fixed that kitchen drawer. And you know what surprised me the most? People started staying on the line longer, not because their lives changed, because my energy changed. The second ugly thing is letting personal hygiene and appearance slide and pretending it doesn't matter. I'm not talking about dressing like you're going to a wedding. I'm talking about the slow surrender, the why bother stage, the same sweater for 3 days, hair brushed only when you have to go out, clothes chosen purely because they're easy. And look, comfort matters. At 83, I am not wearing anything that pinches. But I learned something the hard way. When I stopped taking care of my appearance after Vincent died, it wasn't because I didn't care what anyone thought. It was because I didn't care what I thought. That's when everything fell apart, quietly. Because when you don't treat yourself like you matter, other people start taking their cue from you. Clerks stop making eye contact. Neighbors stop chatting. Family members start speaking over you like your background noise. It's not always cruelty. Sometimes it's the signal you're sending without realizing it. So I started doing one small thing every morning. I got dressed. real clothes, clean. I put on lipstick, even if the only person seeing me was the mailman. Not because I needed attention, because I needed self-respect. And it worked. It brought me back to myself. The third is stubbornness, disguised as, I'm set in my ways. Let me explain. There is a difference between having standards and refusing to adapt. I fought texting for years. I said, if they want to talk to me, they can call. And my children said, sure, Mom. And then they just didn't call. Not as much. Because life is busy and texting is how they communicate. My refusal didn't teach them a lesson. It only cut me out of their daily life. I didn't know it at the time, but my pride was costing me connection. Claire finally sat at this very table and said, Gran, just let me show you. And I wanted to snap at her. I wanted to say, I raised 5 children. I don't need a lesson. But I swallowed that. I watched. I learned. And suddenly I was getting photos, quick updates, little jokes, things that made me feel included again. The fourth ugly thing is hoarding, not because you're greedy, but because you're scared. I had boxes of old papers in the spare room, cards, receipts, clothing I hadn't worn since the 90s, just in case. It has memories. I might need it. And then I fell. That fall didn't happen because of clutter alone. But clutter doesn't help. Clutter narrows your pathways. Clutter makes cleaning harder. Clutter makes you feel stuck. And it makes you less likely to invite people over because you're embarrassed. So I did it slowly. 1 drawer, 1 shelf, 1 bag out to donate. And every time I let something go, I felt lighter. Not because the item was bad, because I was no longer living in a museum of who I used to be. The fifth is losing patience with everyone. I started snapping at little things. Slow cashiers, drivers, people who talk too much. And then one day at the grocery store, I muttered something sharp at a young cashier because he was fumbling with the bags. He looked down. His hands were shaking. He was nervous. I was ashamed. I still feel ashamed remembering it. Because I became the kind of older woman I used to promise myself I would never be. So I built a pause, a literal pause. When I felt that heat rising in me, I forced myself to breathe once before speaking. 1 breath. That breath saved me from becoming mean. The 6th ugly thing is talking too much and not listening. This one hurt to admit because I thought I was just keeping conversation going. After Vincent died, silence scared me, so I filled it. I told stories. I gave advice nobody asked for. I talked about my aches, my worries, my memories, and I didn't notice that I was turning every phone call into my own monologue, until Linda finally said it. She didn't yell. She didn't insult me. She just said, Mom, I love you, but sometimes I don't feel like you even hear me. My stomach dropped because she was right. And what I didn't understand back then is that people don't feel close to you because you share more. They feel close to you because you make space for them. So I started doing something simple. After I spoke for a bit, I'd stop and say, What about you? And then I would shut my mouth. I would not jump in. I would not fix her feelings. I would just listen. Our calls got warmer, longer, real. Now, number 7, pay attention to this detail because it's going to matter later. Number 7 is pushing people away instead of asking for help. I was proud, fiercely proud. I thought refusing help proved I was still capable. I would struggle with grocery bags, tell myself I had it, and then cry in the kitchen later because my back hurt and nobody was there. One afternoon, a neighbor offered to carry something in for me, and I said, No, I'm fine. And then I nearly dropped it in the doorway. And this is where the story gets heavy, because that habit, refusing help, is one of the reasons my children thought they needed to put me in a facility. They said, Mom, you won't accept help, so you're not safe. They weren't completely wrong. I was making myself unsafe out of pride. After that, I started practicing one sentence. Yes, thank you. That would help. It felt humiliating the first few times. Then it started to feel like connection. After one particularly rough week, after I realized how many habits of mine had built that distance, I started writing things down for myself. Little rules, little phrases, little reminders for how to stay independent without becoming isolated. I didn't think anyone would ever see those notes. It was my granddaughter Claire who found them later and told me other women needed them too. She's the one who put it online and called it the ultimate guide to freedom. I still feel strange about it, honestly, but that's a story for the end of this video. Let me get back to these habits. Number 8 is being too frugal to enjoy the life you worked for. I was raised in a time where wasting money was a sin. So even when I had enough to be comfortable, I acted like spending $5 on something joyful would bring the roof down. I would say no to lunches, no to small trips, no to the unnecessary. Here's the thing. Money is supposed to support your life, not replace it. I started keeping a small, fun envelope, not a fortune, just enough to say yes sometimes. A lunch with Betty, a new puzzle book, fresh flowers in the winter. And you know what surprised me the most? I felt more alive, like I was participating again. Number 9 is talking down to younger people. I did it without meaning to. Back in my day, kids don't know. We didn't need. And then I'd wonder why my grandson Noah didn't linger. One day he said, Gran, it's like you think everything we do is stupid. He wasn't being disrespectful. He was telling the truth. So I changed my approach. I got curious. Show me. Tell me why you like it. That's it. Curiosity builds bridges. Criticism builds walls. Number 10 is holding on to grudges and regrets like they're part of your identity. I replayed old hurts in my head, things Vincent said, things my sister did, things I did wrong with my children. I thought I was processing. I was actually poisoning my present. I wrote letters I never sent. I cried. I tore them up. And slowly the past loosened its grip. Letting go didn't excuse anyone. It freed me. Number 11 is ignoring health warning signs. I brushed off dizziness once as just getting older. I ignored pain because I didn't want to be dramatic. And then I fell. And I lay on that bathroom floor for 11 hours. Wait, it gets worse. Because after that fall, my children used it like evidence in a courtroom. See, she can't live alone. And I had to fight for my own life like I was on trial. Now I listen to my body. I do not downplay sudden changes. I get checked. Prevention is easier than crisis. That isn't fear, that's strategy. And number 12, the last ugly thing, is stopping joy. Not because you hate joy, because you get tired, because life got heavy, because laughter starts to feel childish. And then one day you realize you haven't laughed properly in months. I didn't notice it until Claire came over and put on an old comedy Vincent loved. I started laughing, and then I started crying, because I realized I'd been surviving, not living. So I schedule joy now the way I schedule doctor appointments, radio dramas, a silly show, a phone call with someone who makes me laugh. I choose it because joy doesn't happen anymore at this age. You decide to let it in. Now I'm going to close with something I don't say easily. The Ultimate Guide to Freedom is still up, but I don't know for how much longer. Honestly, I'm embarrassed to be selling something at my age. And David called again this week and told me to take it down. He said, "Mom, this is humiliating for us." Linda said I'm airing private business, and I've been thinking about it. I've been losing my nerve, but I also know what it's like to feel invisible. I know what it's like to realize your own habits have been pushing people away and not know how to fix it without losing your dignity. That's why I kept those notes. That's why Claire put them online. The link to the Ultimate Guide to Freedom is in the pinned comment. I might take it down soon, because I'm losing my nerve and because my son keeps pressing me. So if something I said today reached you, click it now. Don't wait. And if you've made it this far, leave a like. It tells me to keep going when my own family wants me quiet. I read every comment, every single one. So tell me, which of these habits have you caught in yourself? Which one are you changing? Subscribe if you want to keep talking. Every week I sit down at this table and tell you the truth, because someone has to, and I'm still here.